Good evening. This is Roxanne Truin with the Michigan State University Science Festival. And tonight we're joined by the MSU Broad Art Museum, who is going to do their Nights at the Museum event for us tonight. And I will let them take it away.
Thanks, Roxanne. Hi, everyone. All right, here we go. Let me see if I can get perfect. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Night at the Museum. We are proud to be part of MSU Science Festival. I'm Megan, museum educator for youth and family programs at the MSU Broad Art Museum, and I'm joined by Michelle, Director of Education, and Ellie, Education and Family Programs Fellow. Cool. There we go. I'm going to coordinate so I'm reading at the same time. There we go. We are so excited to be here and have planned a fun and interesting interactive program for you. We'll be asking you to talk with your family as we go along, so gather everyone around wherever you happen to be. This is being streamed on Facebook Live, so please invite your friends to join in. Over the next hour, you'll be learning about two artists who have work at the museum right now, and you'll be making your own artwork too. It would be great if you can have some natural materials nearby, but if you don't, we will share photos of ours with you. And if you haven't already, please collect some materials for drawing. As I mentioned, this program is from the MSU Broad Art Museum. Our museum is a place for people to come and learn new things, see different points of view, and share their ideas with others. The artists share their ideas through their artwork, and we get to hear from each other as part of this program tonight. You might notice we're in a webinar format, so sharing with each other is going to look a little different. And Ellie's going to give you instructions for using a neat chat app in a minute. If you live in the area, you may have seen the MSU Broad before, or maybe you've even been inside. This truly unique building was designed by architect Zaha Hadid and is a work of art in itself, as you can see. The reflective surface of the museum means it always looks a little different depending on the weather. So if I were there right now, I imagine it would be a shiny gray based on the weather here in Lansing. If you want to visit in person, you can. The museum is open Friday, Saturday, and Sundays from 12 to 6. You just reserve a free ticket on our website. So here's a really nice view of the east side of the building. And let's take a virtual walk around and go in through the west entrance. I'm going to walk you up toward the museum. Just kind of click through those. You can keep going, Michelle. I just want to show everyone. There's the door. And here we are inside the museum when you first walk in. And we are going to turn left to go in the galleries. And now here we are entering the exhibition Seeds of Resistance, which inspired this program tonight. So now I'm going to hand it over to Ellie.
Okay, great. So we really want to hear all of your different ideas today. So you can do that through going to Slido. You can just type that in on your computer and enter the code 8781. And that's how we'll be able to hear your ideas and hear more about what you're learning today with us. Okay. So if you want to hop over to the next slide, Michelle.
Can you see it? The poll just came up.
Okay, perfect. All right, great. So the first question that we want to ask you is, what natural materials did or will your family collect? So, okay, great. I'm already seeing some of the materials that you're collecting. And if you didn't collect anything yet, that is completely okay. So feel free to put in the chat something that maybe you've collected in the past with your family. I know something that I've collected with my family is rocks. So often when we're walking on the beach or walking through the woods, that's a material that we have found. Another material that my family finds together is pine cones. So we like to collect different types of pine cones as well. So let's see. Love to hear different things that you either collected for this or that you found in the past. So I'm seeing leaves. A lot of different people are finding leaves, pine cones, acorns. I've collected acorns before too. Rocks, sticks. Okay, great. So we're seeing lots of different materials, flowers too, from a lot of different people. I collected some flowers for today. Okay, great. Well, thank you for sharing the different materials that you've collected with us. Feel free to keep those close to you, and throughout this time together, we will revisit them and look at them a little bit more closely.
Oh, go ahead.
So these are some different materials that we collected. Megan, are these the ones that you found?
Yeah, that is my tray of all sorts of things my daughter and I collected earlier. Got some different flowers, sticks, leaves, and grass.
Great. So these are some of the materials that I found. These were ones that I just found in my backyard. And I was kind of surprised by some of them. Some of them I hadn't looked more closely at before. So it was interesting to look around and see the different plants that I could find.
And these are a few things that I collected with my daughter, also in our backyard, and we were focusing on new growth, things that will be much bigger soon, but have just started budding out. So you might be wondering a little bit, this is Science Fest. Here we are talking about art. What is the relationship between science and art? What do scientists and artists have in common? On first glance, I think folks often see these as polar opposites, but artists, like scientists, look really closely at the world around them. And in doing so, they are thinking a lot about the past, the present, and the future. Both artists and scientists are really dedicated to asking the big questions that help us understand our world, how it works, and why it works or is put together the way it is. They ask, what is true and why does it matter? And they both use creativity to think about how we can move society forward. So artists are just like scientists, really engaged in observing, in researching, and in the idea of the search itself, right? That questions are so important. So they often think very deeply and wonderingly for answers. So today we're going to learn about a few artists who are observing and searching like scientists. And then together we're going to share a little bit of our own observations and encourage you to observe like scientists and artists as well.
So like Michelle was saying, we can use art as a tool to look more closely and learn more about something. So today we are going to start by doing a drawing activity. So I want you to pull out the materials that you have, make sure they're close by you. So have the natural materials as well as some different drawing materials that you can work with. So using art, we can look closely and learn more about our world. So we are going to start by looking at our materials and thinking about the different textures that they have. So you saw in the picture that I had that I found lots of different dandelions that were growing in my backyard. So I have some here with me, and I'm going to look closely at the different parts of the plant. So something that I noticed is when I feel the different parts of this, is that this feels really soft. So this top part feels really soft. So take your natural material and kind of feel the different parts of your plant or the different objects that you have. I'm seeing lots of different things. So this part I noticed was a little bit more prickly. This part feels kind of smooth. And I also collected some different parts of the dandelion plant. So I noticed the leaves are pretty soft. And then I also noticed that as a dandelion goes through its natural cycle, this part is really soft and is very different from the flower. So take some time to feel your material, and maybe that can come through in your drawing. So you can see the drawing that I made on the screen. And like I said, I was interested in the different parts of the plant, so I drew those for you. You can see here different drawings that I made. So I also want you to look at it and think about the different colors that maybe you're seeing. See if anything surprises you as you're looking at it closely. I was surprised when I was looking at the dandelions to actually find a different color. So you'll see that on this stem, this looks pretty like light green. But in this one, I actually found some red that is moving through it. And so in my drawing, I wanted to show that I was able to discover that by really highlighting the different colors that I saw by putting them up top. So that was kind of me using my observation skills to look more closely at that part of the plant. So take some time to draw the different things that you're noticing, looking at the colors and the different textures that you can see. I don't know if Michelle or Megan, if you're noticing anything in the plants that you have.
Yes, so I already drew these for our project because we were preparing, but I had not touched them yet, really. Like I picked it up and I put it in my tray and then I drew it. But thank you, Ellie, because I didn't realize like there's some interesting feeling on here, like smoothness, fuzziness on the little seed. And then one side of this feels more smooth than the other, and it's getting kind of worn out as I touch it. But yeah, like, and there's kind of like a reddish color that I didn't see before. So I'm adding that to my drawing.
Okay, great. Yeah, I also didn't notice like the different shapes that this plant can have too. So this one kind of like reminded me more of like a triangle top, whereas like some of them are a lot more open. This one feels more like an oval or a circle to me, and it's really fluffy. So take some time to explore that. And you can see that through my drawing, I was looking at the different shapes, thinking about the different colors, and looking at the different textures. So now that we've had some time to look at this material a bit more, we can set aside this drawing, but we're gonna come back to this and we'll continue learning more about the plants that we've collected.
Yeah, so just like we asked you to do, we're going to learn about an artist who collects natural materials and uses them in her artwork. This is Vivian Sansour. We will look at her artwork shortly, but first we want to look at this portrait of Vivian. So just look at it closely, and what do you notice? Maybe you notice what she's holding, maybe the shelves behind her, the jars on the shelves, the green wall, and there's an apron hanging over there. She's got a big smile on her face. You can learn a lot about this artist just by looking at the way she's presented in this portrait. Knowing that she collects things, just start thinking, what do you think she might collect? We will tell you, but what might she do with those things? And what are you curious about? It's a good place to start when you meet an artwork. So Vivian Sansour is an artist, a storyteller, a researcher, and a conservationist from Beit Jala, Palestine. She's the founder of the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library, which is the artwork we're talking about at the MSU Broad right now. So let's take a look. Here we are. When you walk through the Palestine Heirloom Seed Library, this is what you see, most of it. Like other libraries, it is more than one thing. There are these large photos on the wall. There's a welcoming table in the center. And there's a shelf full of jars and books. We're going to get closer to the shelf now. So does this look familiar? You might remember seeing shelves of jars in the portrait just a few seconds ago. This is a very important part of her work, and the jars are filled with seeds. There are over 25 different varieties of seeds in this library, preserving heirloom varieties of plants. Can look a little closer, Michelle. Yeah, good. An heirloom seed is a seed that has been passed down through generations, carefully grown and saved because it is considered valuable. A few reasons a plant might be valuable are its flavor, nutritional value, maybe its strength, how it holds up in weather. Another reason is that plants we eat are part of our cultures. The foods we eat are important to us, connecting us with our ancestors and one another. Since seeds are such an important part of this artwork, I'd like to invite you to share your favorites. So we're going to use Slido and answer this question. What plants and seeds are important to you? And I see if you just joined us through Facebook, we are using a website called Slido to participate. You can just go to slido.com or scan this QR code and you'll be able to share your answers with us too, which would be really, really great. So we've got blueberries. Those are important to me too. Very good. More blueberries. Oh, blackberries. Okay, good. Watermelon. Cedar trees, interesting. Pine trees. Oak acorns. Cool, these are all things that I can't say I've seen all of these plants in person, actually. I don't know if I've ever seen blackberries growing before, but now I'm thinking about it. So thank you for sharing. Pumpkins. Apples. Yeah, we know about a lot of seeds and like we eat foods that all come from seeds, but we don't always think about it. So I think this is a really neat way to get started. Tomatoes. All right, you can keep adding if you want to, and we will be able to see it, but we'll go to the next slide. I think it just said milkweed as we were flying by for the butterflies, right? For the monarchs. All right, so back to the seed library. Vivian started the seed library because she cares about our connection to the past and through the food, but also about biodiversity, the variety of life on our planet. We often talk about endangered species of animals, right? But did you know that plants can be endangered too? Vivian noticed that some foods she loved eating as a child were no longer being grown in her hometown, and she worried that these plants might become extinct if she didn't do something about it. So she started saving seeds, and that's how this whole project began. So how would you feel if the seed you just mentioned became extinct? If it was just not growing anymore. You couldn't get it at the store, couldn't grow it in your yard. There's many reasons why a plant might become endangered, including like farmers' access to good soil, which could be impacted by factors like war, politics, pollution. The plant is also grown for economic reasons, right? Farmers need to be able to sell the foods they grow, and people need to know how to cook them. Sometimes people just get excited about one new plant and forget about growing another. So that the seeds don't get lost, Vivian and her collaborators are bringing the stories of seeds back to life through this project. And it's really exciting. On the next slide, you get to see a lot of those people. So this is pretty cool. This is a really big wall in the gallery if you do end up going in, and you can look closely at every photo. This photo mural is one way that she shares the stories. It's on the wall near the seed shelf. Here you can see photos of seeds and plants and the people who love them. So Vivian collaborates with farmers, seed savers, and community members to collect seeds and stories about the plants they produce. The stories are really important. Because people share their stories, more people are learning to love, grow, and cook with the plants that were grown by their ancestors. So now I have a video clip where we can meet some of Vivian's collaborators and hear about their experience being part of the seed library. It's about 2 minutes long. I'll see you on the other side. Michelle, do you want us to try swapping? I don't know if we're allowed to screen share, if that would help.
Sure. We'll stop screen share for a moment and see if we can get that video to pull up.
Mhm.
It's always exciting to hear directly from the artists.
There you go. Can you hear it?
احنا عندنا فلسطين كنوز مش بذور.
هذه البذور اللي كانت من جدودنا ورثناها ابا عن جد.
بطل موجود لانه الناس بطلت تزرع، انا باكلش ليش؟
لا انا بشتغل في البذور البلديه وشيء اساسي عندنا البذور البلديه لانه في اصناف مش ممكن نقدر نتخلى عنها نشتغل بدونها. اول ما بخطر على بالنا طبعا اكيد الجدوعي لانه الجدوعي براند ويعني في يوم من الايام كان مسؤول عن يعني فاليو تشين كامله اللي هو البطيخ الفلسطيني اللي كان مشهور في الاسواق العربيه وكان له وكانوا المزارعين اللي يزرعوه يعني منتفعين بشكل كبير.
ممكن انا معني في القمح هيئه السماء يعني بعبر عن قمحنا الاصلي كان مفقود. انا صح اخذت كميه يعني بيجي قليله اول شيء يعني هي كدي، بس السنه الجايه انا بقدر اخذتها لاني اصير اعمل لا غير سنه السنه والسنه اللي بعدها والسنه اللي بعدها اني اخذ لي وكمان اقدر اعطي كمان ناس انا بستفيد من نفس البرنامج.
احنا على زمان ابوي يعني بكينا جاي نزرع، بطلنا نزرع. انا وزلمتي بكينا نزرع كل سنه شيء وشوي. عملنا 30 40 شوي القمح.
الخيار الابيض انا اذكر وانا شاب صغير ما كناش نعرف الخيار الاخضر هذا. اجى اليوم اللي احنا نرجع فيه لاصلنا محافظتي عليه لانه تقليدي من جذورنا من تاريخنا من تراثنا.
البندوره البلديه لو اختفت يعني مش انتهت ومش بطلت موجوده انا يعني بكون حزين كثير، بكون راح من عندنا شيء له ثقافه. انا بحكي عن جانب زراعي اقتصادي. في عندنا كثير من البذور والاصناف اللي لو نهتم فيها ممكن هي اللي تجيب لنا الجدوى الاقتصادي.
ان شاء الله برجع الجذوع وبرجع القمح الهديه وبزرع الشحله وبرجع كل شيء ان شاء الله رب العالمين.
احنا راح نزرع كميه واذا بيشاركونا اهل المزارع.
Do you want to swap back then, Michelle, or do you want me to just keep sharing?
If it works, you can keep.
Okay, just let me know. We want to switch. Okay, I'll keep going. So just wanted to share that Palestine is in the Eastern Mediterranean region, circled here in pink, just in case you didn't have that in your mental map. So while this project began in Palestine, it's grown to include places like Michigan, here where we are. She says, I wanted to explore the idea that perhaps everywhere there is something beautiful to celebrate and to conserve. So some of the seeds in those jars are actually from the Midwestern region of the United States too. So in this exhibition, we invite visitors to learn about plants and seeds, but also to share their own stories. Have you ever thought, hopefully now you're thinking about the foods that grow in, or the seeds that grow into the foods you eat, and the plants in your yard, in your neighborhood, and how they all began as a seed too. And you've collected materials, possibly, or you're thinking about doing it now from your yard. So we just wanted to get you really thinking about plants and seeds. And now we're going to go back to the drawing that Ellie had us begin earlier. There might be a couple slides in between. Oh, there we go.
Okay, perfect. So we're gonna bring back this drawing, and just like Vivian showed us, we can see that there's a lot of plants and seeds that tell us different stories. So through our artwork, we're gonna spend this time exploring a little bit some of the stories that we have or can find through the materials that you all collected. And if you didn't collect materials, feel free to keep working with either the ones that Megan and I or Michelle collected as well. I'll tell you about a little bit of some of the things that I learned or how I started with thinking about a story about the dandelions that I found in my backyard. So I first thought about just like where I found this plant. So maybe that's something that you can include in your story or write around your art piece. So I found these dandelions growing on the side of my house in my backyard. And I also thought about where in the past that I've been able to find this plant. So this plant has always been growing in my neighborhood. And I also think about dandelions when I'm going on a trip or I'm driving, because a lot of times I see them on the side of the road. And I see the bright yellow color, and it makes me happy. So something else we can think about too is maybe some of the memories that you have with this plant. I knew in my drawing, as I was making it, I started to remember a lot more about this plant and some different things about it that I included in the art piece that I made. And you'll see some of them written on the outside. So I remembered as a kid, I would make these into flower crowns. I don't know if anyone else has done that, but I would wrap it around and tie it so it could fit around my head. Another funny story that I remembered was that if you take a dandelion and like rub it on your skin, it can kind of make it a little bit yellow. And my mom always said that that meant that you liked butter. I don't know if anyone else had that silly story. But those things, those stories, those memories can be brought up by the different plants that you have around you. So I wrote those down on my artwork so that I could remember them and store them all in one place as a way to gather those memories. You can also spend some time maybe learning about this plant. So I spent some time researching and looking up some different facts about dandelions. And I was really surprised to find that the whole entire plant is edible. I had never eaten a dandelion before, and I didn't know that all parts of it are safe to eat. And I found myself looking through different recipes or different ways that people harvest dandelions and the best kinds to find and at what time you can get them. But I found that really interesting, and that's something I'm going to try after this. And I also learned that dandelions are really good for you. They're good for your body and they're really healthy to eat. So I wrote down some of those facts around the dandelion as well. Okay, so we're gonna show a video that I made. This is an art piece that I made thinking about the different plants that are in my grandmother's garden. So we can see that plants tell stories, and I wanted to document the different ways that the different stories that were important to me about plants. My grandmother, she plants a pine tree for every child that is born in my family. So you'll see lots of different materials that are included in this, and pay attention to the different ways that I'm combining natural materials into this work. So I hope that you were able to see some of those materials that I talked about that were really special to me, and the different ways that I combine them into this piece. And maybe you can start to think about some ways that you can combine natural materials into your art.
Oops. Okay, thank you, Ellie. As I watched that video, I was thinking not only about the ways that artists observe like scientists, but also the ways that they experiment. Watching you experiment with different materials and, try to see how you could produce pigments in different ways. And, you see that commonality between the laboratory and the artist studio a bit. So now we're going to look at another artist. We've seen tonight how the first artist we looked at, Vivian Sansour, and the other artists and farmers and community members that she collaborates with are using art to look really closely at our past and to think about our future. Like a scientist, Vivian started her project by observing her world. When she noticed that many of the plants from her childhood were disappearing, she started to ask questions about why. And then she thought about how to change that. The drawings, the photographs, the notes, the conversations, the seeds that Vivian and her collaborators are saving, are creating, encourage us to learn a lot more about our natural world. And, perhaps even more importantly, it encourages us to care for and to save things that are important in our natural world. For Vivian, it's not just about saving seeds. Someone said this to me and I really stuck with it. It's also about seeds saving us. So now I'm going to introduce you to another artist. At first, this artist might look very different from Vivian, and we'll talk about some ways that they have similarities as well as some contrasts in how they work. So this artist is Beatrice Cortez. And like Vivian, she's really interested in learning from the past and thinking about how essential listening to our ancestors is for the future. Her name, again, is Beatrice Cortez, and you can see her pictured here in her studio. She's from El Salvador, and she immigrated to the United States, to Los Angeles, California, where she lives now. Through her work, she often reflects on these two places and on her journey traveling from one home to a new home. Here, we see her in her workshop making art. Look around closely at the workshop that she's in. Observe some of the tools that she's using to make art. Here we can see some of those tools up closer. What tools do you use to make art? Perhaps you use paper and pencils, paint. Maybe you use clay and other materials to make small sculptures, or maybe big ones. Or maybe you sometimes use recycled materials or natural materials, like what we've seen Vivian using, what we just saw Ellie using. Beatrice, she's really drawn to using metal in a lot of her work. Most metals, like aluminum, silver, copper, they come from the Earth's crust. So when we think of metal, I don't usually think of it as a natural material, but it's a reminder that so much of what we use as resources are derived from our Earth. So, many metals, they're extracted from rocks, and the type of metal that Beatrice uses is steel. So steel is made from iron ore, and it's a compound of iron, but it does have this starting from nature, but it is transformed into steel using some heating processes. So first, the raw material for it is mined, and then it's transformed to become the steel that we think of. So steel is one of the most common metals used in the world. It's used to build ships, cars, bridges, and even art. And now I think, let's go to the next slide. And we can see Beatrice starting to transform that metal a little bit more. For Beatrice, metal's more than it seems. She says, as you can see on the quote here on the slide, that if you mess it up, you can patch it. When we say this is made of steel, we imagine it to be super strong, but things made of steel can collapse. So Beatrice, when she uses steel, she uses it as a way to show that although some things in our world may seem unbreakable and unchangeable, that they can be changed. And metal, steel, although we might think of it as being very strong and as not changing, as Beatrice said, it can collapse. But you can even turn it back, you can even turn it into a liquid, right? So metal can be reformed over and over again. It can be changed over and over again. So now let's look at a work of art that Beatrice has made, a finished work that shows the steel. So this is on view in the Seeds of Resistance exhibition at the museum currently. So this is part of the same exhibition that Vivian Sansour's work is. And it's made from steel, as well as a few other special materials, which we'll talk about in a minute. It's called Generosity 2. Now let's look at the next slide. And here we see Beatrice, the artist, again, and she's standing beside Generosity 1. So this is the first of these two sculptures she's made. You may notice that it's very similar to the one on view at the museum, but that it appears to be standing up on legs, where ours is suspended in the air. Let's look at the next image, and we can see something that inspires this work. So this is Sputnik, which was launched on October 4th in 1957 by the Soviet Union, and it was the world's first artificial satellite. It was quite small, about the size of a beach ball. And Beatrice's sculpture is a little bigger than a beach ball, but up in the air where you see it, it looks about the size of a beach ball as well. And it only took about 98 minutes for it to orbit the Earth. As an artist, Beatrice thinks a lot about the past, present, and future. And so when she designed these two sculptures, Generosity 1 and Generosity 2, Sputnik was in her mind. And let's look at the next slide. And here you can see Generosity 2, again, floating in the air. And if you see this piece in person and you stand there long enough, you will begin to notice that it actually very slowly rotates. So you might be able to see it moving a little bit in the space as well. So imagine that this silver sculpture is a satellite floating through outer space. We can go to the next slide. So back to our poll for a minute. And if you're just now joining us from Facebook, you can add to our polls by visiting slido.com, and our key is 8781. I'm curious, if we think of this sculpture like a satellite floating through space, what do you think it might hold? So we've got a few answers coming up now. Some folks are thinking that it might hold different types of seeds, maybe beans. I love this answer here. Someone says 4 soccer balls. And definitely the piece almost looks like a soccer ball. It is mathematically quite similar and looks almost like a geodesic dome. Got some more ideas of some natural materials, thinking about feathers. So let's look a little closer. So here you can see that the silver soccer ball shaped sculpture that we see suspended has small plastic containers that are attached to it. And in each of those plastic containers, we see a seed, an important seed that has been grown in the Americas for centuries. And we can take a look at the next slide. We can see that even closer. And here you might be able to begin recognizing some of the seeds that are in Generosity 1, which are very similar to the seeds that are in Generosity 2 on view at the museum. You might notice in the very center that you can see some seeds that are kind of yellow in color. So here we see corn. Let's go to the next slide. All of the seeds that are included represent different types of grains, ancient grains. And so here we can see a few of those highlighted. We see corn, we also see sorghum, and we see quinoa. And so these are all grains that are represented in Generosity 1 and 2. And each of these seeds, they carry their own story. This is almost like a time capsule that Beatrice is imagining, that we could send off into space like a satellite that could carry information for the future. Each of these seeds, they carry their own story. And that story is the history of all the different civilizations that have farmed them. The artist, she tells us that saving seeds is like a gift the ancestors offered for the humans that had not been born yet, an act of generosity towards someone they didn't know. And remember that the title of the piece is Generosity. We can go to the next slide, just to feature one of the seeds and talk about it a little bit more. When we say that these seeds have a very long history, corn grew up alongside civilizations that farmed it. So, at the same time that humans helped make corn what it is today, corn helped feed those civilizations that were farming it. So they have a reciprocal relationship to each other. It was first domesticated about 9,000 years ago in Mexico, and over many, many generations with human intervention. A grass evolved into what we know as corn today, producing these very delicious kernels that many of us look forward to at just the right time every year to be able to harvest the sweet corn. Corn is used, yes, it's on our dinner plates, but it's used to make things as well. Everything from flour to syrup. It's feed for livestock. It can be transformed into ethanol. It can be used to make plastics. So, even as we think about the ancient civilizations that helped domesticate and continue growing these ancient grains, contemporary society is also continuing to think about new uses and new ways to preserve and continue farming these as well. So if we go to the next slide, I have a question for you all. Beatrice says, that seeds that she has included in Generosity One carry this knowledge of ancient peoples sent across time for all of us to survive in the present and for others to survive in the future. So she's thinking a lot about what are some things that are really important for us to continue saving and sharing. And for her, she's thinking about seeds, but I'm curious, something that you think might be important to save and share for the future. As you think about that, I'll read a quote from the artist. She says, "I love this message that generosity carries as well. It is an invitation for each of us to also send gifts of generosity towards unknown others who we will never meet, and who will recirculate these gifts and other gifts towards yet unknown others." So we have some things people are typing in. Some folks are thinking about specific plants that we might save for. So soybeans, apple seeds. Others are thinking about their own personal stories and personal histories and sharing those. I see water and soil. Thinking about water and soil, I think, is a nice circle back to when we were talking about Vivian's work and the importance of biodiversity. It's not just that we need to save seeds, but we have to protect all the things that rely on those seeds and that allow those seeds to grow. When we protect the diversity of our plant life, we're also protecting the diversity of our animal life, our insect life, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I think we're going to head back to our drawing for a moment.
We will, yeah. So thanks, Michelle. So now we've learned about the ways that two artists think creatively about biodiversity on our planet. So it's time to return to your nature drawing and take a look. When you think about those bits of nature that you collected, do you have any new ideas now? Sometimes a seed of an idea can grow into something really big. My new notes say I should acknowledge my pun. So there's my pun. So I want you to take out your drawing again if you had set it aside and use a few minutes to add any ideas you have to them. So maybe you have an idea about looking more closely at plants on your next walk. Perhaps about noticing the way things grow in the spring. Right now here in Michigan, everything is just starting to grow and it's so exciting. Perhaps, like Ellie, you want to research and learn more about a plant. Or maybe there's something that you want to grow that you've never grown and now you've got an idea for it. Maybe you want to investigate the ecosystem in your own backyard or try growing food. So I'm going to add ideas to your drawing. And here's some photos of ours as we added a little more. And honestly, Ellie, while I was watching your video, I've seen it before, but you're always inspiring me. So I smashed some flowers. This is my page like 2 hours ago, but look at my purple smush. That's a flower. I was just like, I wonder if I can. And then it was so bright. I got really excited. So
that's really cool. I started doing that with
this kind of
ones. Once I had that memory of it on my skin, I started using it in my art piece too, because I was like, oh, I can do that.
Yeah, so cool. All right, so thank you for that. So let's see, what do we have next? Oh yeah, so you can also learn more about this exhibition, Seeds of Resistance, by checking out our family activities. We have some on the website. Including this native plant scavenger hunt. You can keep it with you throughout the summer as you explore outside. And we also have a biodiversity journal that encourages you to observe the natural world around you. So use observation and creativity to grow your relationship with the diversity of our planet. Record your feelings, ideas, and observations. Just like we did here tonight, you can keep it going. So we always want to know, what are we sharing that's resonating with you? What kinds of things have you learned? Has your thinking changed at all? So we'd really like to hear something that you've learned from our presentation tonight. And you can use Slido for that. And while we're kind of waiting for things to pop up, I'm also going to go forward one, and then I'll come back if that's okay. We would also really love to see your drawing. If you have a drawing and you want to send it to us, this is our family programs email, fabclub@msu.edu. If you want to send it to us, we would love to see. But here is our, oh no, there it is. Something you learned slide. Sorry about that. While we're seeing things pop up, use plants to make marks and paint. Yay. The first satellite, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Artists that were new to you, great. Yeah, that's one thing, I mean, I think all of us really like about working at the museum. We learn about new artists that are new to us at least. Dandelions are edible. Yeah. Gonna add stories to your nature journal. All right, cool. Well, I will just sum us up then by saying, if there's one thing that artists and scientists have in common, it's their ability to think creatively about today's important issues. And we want to thank you for joining us as we explored many ways that artists investigate our planet's health through art, and how you can take care of our world starting in your own backyard. We want to thank MSU Science Festival again, and of course, all of you for joining us tonight. And have a great weekend, and go pick up some more bits of nature and do stuff with them. Thank you.
Thank you, MSU Broad folks. I really learned a lot, and especially about writing your stories with your art really resonated with me tonight. So now I'm going to have to go, as I go out and explore nature, jot down my feelings and maybe stories from the past. So I like that. From the science side, we do observations, but from the art side, we also do observations. So that's another thing that art and science, when they combine, makes a wonderful message.
Thanks, Roxanne. That's so good to hear.
And if anybody has any questions, you can type them into the Q&A, or if you're listening on Facebook, you can type them in the comment section. We'll hang out for just a couple minutes to see if anybody has any questions. And thank you guys again. And I will say, while we're waiting to see if anybody has questions, that the Science Festival has a few more days left. We have events next Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday evening. So we hope you can join us for those events as well. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in, so I think we can sign off for the night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night.
Night.